need to tell someone about this. But I cannot speak to anyone I know. I don't want to be called crazy, a liar, or irresponsible. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I am certain that that was not a child. I live in southern Taiwan, and I've been going slowly nuts during this quarantine. 2 weeks of being a shut-in, my significant other is no longer just significant to me, and I haven't talked to 5 different people this month. So, I've been throwing myself into cycling. Cycling was a dead hobby to me. An over-expensive bike and the requisite bike gear, shirt, those diaper-looking shorts, clunky shoes, gathering dust in the corner. But the pandemic hit, and the loneliness, it gave me something to do. A good way to kill half a day. From my front door, I can cycle east and be out of the too crowded city in 15 minutes, into the mountains in an hour. Lots of trees and birds, no need to wear a face mask, and some good exercise and sweat. It's like a different world, verdant and green. Once you get in those hills, you can go exploring. There's hundreds of roads, paths really, which are not on Google Maps, and half the time, you don't know where you're going to end up. You have to be careful out there, but the risk is part of the fun. A typhoon hit in the middle of the week. A typhoon during a pandemic. What luck. And I was cooped up for 3 solid days, annoying old friends on Skype and doing everything I can to not call my ex-girlfriend. She is the reason I'm here. We met in college, and we moved to her home country to be together. I learned a little Mandarin and I got a job. She realized that her foreign boyfriend wasn't all that impressive back in Taiwan, and she started meeting other people. Just as the typhoon's last blast of real bad weather passed on, I put on my cycling gear and I went out into the rain. It was so wet I left my earbuds at home. No music for this ride. I was drenched in less than a minute, but I didn't care. I needed something to do. By the time I hit the foothills, the rain had started petering out, and I went through my usual web of roads. I had my usual route, but no real destination. I remember my path by landmarks, like broken down old cars or the house with a goat in the front yard. And, for no real reason whatsoever, I made a left down a little paved path that I'd never noticed before. I could have passed it 1,000 times without nosing down it, but that day, I did. Just a narrow path in the foothills, way out from regular civilization. As you go down these roads, they will get narrower. The trees will reach across the path. Sometimes, you'll find a vine stretched across the pavement, like the forest is actively reclaiming the road. Sometimes, it's as thick as my wrist and unbroken. I feel like an adventurer, rediscovering a lost civilization. The road that day, it had an incline that never seemed to end. So I took a couple more turns before I started getting a little worried about not finding my way back. I've been lost before, and it sucks. But it's not an emergency. Try Google Maps. If that doesn't help, just head west until you hit a new road or familiar landmark. And holy shit, I got turned around, totally lost. I doubled back twice, took a turn I thought I took before, and I ended up deeper into the forest. Just a narrow strip of sky above me. The forest was wet, and everything seemed to be on the verge of blossoming. Some unseen insects hummed away, like a low-grade static. The weather, still gusty from the typhoon, it would blow through the trees, making everything sway, and occasionally making leaves dump their chilly water on my back. At some point, I realized that I had no idea where I was going, and honestly, I started getting a little bit scared. I stopped on the side of the paved path. It was no wider than a car width. I hadn't seen a car or even a house for over an hour. I got my phone out and I took it out of its plastic bag. I turned it on, but nothing, just a blank screen. And then I noticed the wetness on the cover and the rip in its plastic bag. No power. The phone was fried. And there I was, under the drizzly grey sky. No idea where I was. Not even sure where the sun is. And on some mountain road. No idea how to get back. Not even an idea what direction west is. And then I cried. Yep, all the pressure and the stress and the loneliness got to me. Alone in a country with no friends, no chance to make friends, and just nothing going on in my life. Alone on the side of the road with no idea what to do or where to go. In the middle of the road, my right bike shoe, it clicked into the pedal. Me, holding up my weeping weight on the left. The forest, not quite jungle, but dark green and thick. Maybe 2 arm lengths out from the grey pavement. I felt eyes on me, and I looked right. Eyes slowly blinking at me. Close, maybe 5 steps away, directly into the green. A girl, standing perfectly still, except for her eyes, which danced and squinted and then opened wide and squinted again. Maybe no more than 6 years old. Black hair hanging to her shoulders. A simple grey dress, an undershirt that hung to her knees. A thick tree branch in front of her, separating her from the road. I saw her, and I didn't breathe for 5 seconds. Was she really there? She didn't move, not a shake or a tremble through her whole body, except for her eyes. Her eyes stared at me, looked away. Her black pupils quivered in their sockets, and then darted back, staring at me. I wiped my face. I remember feeling embarrassed about crying in front of this kid, before wondering what the hell this kid was doing out here. "Hello?" I said. "Are you okay?" Nothing. Not a single word from the girl. It was then the realization hit me. A little girl was out here, in the middle of nowhere, probably lost and terrified, and this crying white guy just stops in front of her. Of course she isn't going to move or talk. I dismounted from the bike, unclicking my right cycling shoe, and standing like a newborn giraffe. If you've ever stood in cycling shoes, you know exactly what I mean. "Hi," I said again, and then switching to Mandarin. Ni hao. She didn't move, stood perfectly still, wooden, except for her eyes, dancing and darting. I took a step towards her, both feet still on the pavement. Are you okay? I asked. Ni hao ma? Another step, on the edge of the road, and my mouth filled with a metallic taste. My breath, already rasping from my crying jag, heaved in and out. Every sound became clearer, deeper. I suddenly felt 1,000 eyes on me. My hands, sweaty. Something felt so wrong. I wanted out of there, now. But a lost little kid had to be saved, right? Come to me, I said. Come here, and I'll help you. I motioned to the kid. Come here. Nothing. She stood, motionless. Her hands at her side. Small, brown hair, quivering. But no expression on her face. Absolutely still, except for the slight wavering of her body with the trees. The last gust of wind from the typhoon, it pushed the foliage around, and she swayed with it. As the branches around her swayed left and right, she moved left and right with them. I took a step back, and for a moment, I felt like a fever broke around me. But then, some feeling came over me, like the heat from the sun on your back. But this was pure malevolence, the radiation of hatred. The girl moved slowly, like a leaf unfurling. She put her arms up, like she was asking to be held. A little kid asking to be picked up, protected. And instead of wanting to protect or help, I felt pure nausea, revulsion, fear. My mind, it felt at war with itself. The top of my mind said, there is a child that needs help, safety, protection. You must help her. The rest of my brain, the animal part, was screeching at me. Run! Are you okay? I squeaked out. Her arms, up now, still unmoving. Her eyes, looking at me, dancing, darting, looking away, and then resting on me. I took another step back, put my bike between myself and the forest. Her arms moved, creaked down to shoulder height, imploring me to pick her up. Still, in the exact same spot as when I first saw her. Not 1 inch of movement, except for her darting eyes and the creaky movements of her arms. Her arms moved like doll's arms. You haven't moved, I said. Kids move. You haven't moved. The girl put her arms down. Her face went from plain, emotionless, unmoving, to a snarl. Her mouth opened, but no sound. I looked at her legs, and I swear, they looked like they were planted, growing from the ground. I got on my bike, clicked one of my shoes in. Come here, and I'll help you, I said, but I won't leave the road. The day grew dark. The canopy of the forest clenched down on me, turning the silver of open sky into a tunnel. I clicked into my pedals and I rode as fast as I could. The undergrowth grew. I swear, it started to overgrow the road right in front of me. The tree branches stretched down, and I had to lean all the way over the bike frame to stop them touching me. The width of the pavement, it grew smaller right in front of me as the forest closed in. But I burst through onto another road, and the whole world felt different. I realized I had sweat through my entire cycling kit. And later that night, I found what looked like claw marks on my back where the branches had got me. I sprinted from that path, the hardest 30 minutes of cycling of my life. I went until my lungs burned and my legs died. Eventually, I found a familiar road and I snaked my way back. I was absolutely terrified. I want to leave Taiwan, be gone forever. The rational part of my brain insists that none of this can be true. It is what my grandmother would call having a spell. But I know that it is true. I took a picture of the scrapes on my back to remind myself. When I got back to my apartment, I thought of going to the police or asking if there were any reports of missing children, but instead, I locked the door and I have not left this apartment for days. I can still see the darting eyes, and as my memory replays this over and over, I realized she never blinked. She never moved. She was grown, not a person. What terrible fruit is she?